First day of October. I got a new microphone, so hopefully my voice is coming through a little better. Although I may end up missing the sounds of nature that tend to creep in, but I guess we'll see how it goes. I like this image here. This is teosinte growing in front of a fence between two American yards. Another fence in the background. Teosinte, though, it's got a long story. This is, of course, the thing that went on to become corn. But as you can see right now, there's not anything much like corn going on with it. You can see some seeds, so those will turn into seeds. So it's a little bit more like sorghum. Yeah, at what point did the cob and the pollen separate in domesticated corn? Interesting to think about. October 1st, fall crops coming in. Here is some tobacco planted very late. I don't know if this is going to flower. So it might be a bust as far as getting seed this year, but goes to show that you can pull off something like this. This is direct seeded tobacco. Some didn't make it, but you can, of course, down the line select for ones that do. This planted a little earlier than I did. Here we got some stuff from the daikon Grexes. Looking good here. One thing that's nice about growing Grexes is that, if one plant starts to look bad, you kind of don't have to worry. The others might not have the same fate if this is a genetically diverse group. And I'm thinking it is. I hope. It's just brassicas, planted next to each other, so. Things can be genetically diverse, and, your population of plants can still look quite the same. Consider. Because the difference between certain, even open pollinated varieties is really not as big as we think it is sometimes. Various brassicas coming up, as well as, I think there's some lentils. Yeah, there's lentils there. Stuff kind of poking through. The mulch may actually be, in some places, almost too thick for, the brassicas. But it's interesting to see where patches of things do and don't happen. Again, by having that variation, some sort of randomness, you can spot things that, trends that seem to happen in certain edges. So, yeah, one thing that's kind of cool about growing in a variety is that you can also mix it up with other sort of conditions and get a quicker sense of why things are happening and how things happen, simply because there's just more diversity as well as diversity in conditions that the plants are growing in. For me, I've learned a lot from having quite a bit of shade on one side of the garden. And that cool things can happen in the areas where you do get more shade, simply because there's less water making the soil dry during the day. And down the line, it would be cool to try and have more stuff sort of creeping out from the wetter areas into the more sunlight but drier areas. When I first started out here, I tried to plant some stuff, some Moshadas and some Maximas really, really far down, thinking, I'm just going to make them go. They all have to head in one direction. And that didn't really work out that well. But there's, various reasons for that. That would be an interesting thing to select for, is just a plant that can fight its way to way more sun while still having the benefits of plenty of water. Interesting idea. Theoretically, something you can select for. Over here, this is a Hokusai Grex going into October 1st. I suppose I will have to thin this. Here's a lettuce. Bunch of tomatoes there. Yeah, anyway, things looking nice and green here. Not too much bug damage either, just a few, and so I'll be sort of taking note of that. But in general, there's nothing. I guess things are kind of culling themselves, and this is a pretty easy one to surface sow. So this is all just seed thrown on the ground. This was a Grex, so some stuff's gonna work, some stuff won't, but that's all right. And a few lettuces around here. That's great. Lettuce seeds. Okra. Doing fine. Those pods are sort of shaping up. So here are the results of this year's watermelon breeding project. And you may be looking at this and thinking, God, this is pathetic. But to me, this is totally fine. There's going to be seeds in all of these. This is probably the biggest one, but I didn't really water all that much here on these. I just grew these in a really big bunch and just let them kind of fight it out. Here's 4 more. I'm kind of cleaning this area out to plant some cover crop in, and yeah, so just wanted to show you that what maybe looks like a total failure is actually, in my mind, not bad at all. These will all have seeds. I've been doing the same thing with melons, and man, I'll show you some really, really wimpy, tiny melons, but that have still 100 seeds or so in them. And these are plants that fought it out among other plants and lots of weeds. This is mostly weeds by the end of it here. And so there's something good going on here. These are all also just descendants of once upon a time normal watermelon varieties. So I'm going to try to keep growing them with a little watering. I think it can be pulled off here in this climate where it rains quite a bit. But that's one thing I can select for is some amount of drought tolerance and still getting yield. So anyway, what may seem kind of pathetic to me is, as a breeding project, just fine. So these are this year's watermelons. This is second year on a Grex, by the way. So last year was all name varieties grown together. Took the seeds from that, planted them here very haphazardly, and just let them fight it out. Chinese cabbage, Grex. Looking pretty good. Nice and green. I'd say these are off to the races. Might have to do a little thinning. But I'm liking what I see. Healthy looking plants. These tomatoes, sorry, you're in for a surprise. Maybe some will survive though, who knows. It is seed saving season, I guess you could say. Now is a time when a lot of stuff needs to be processed, or dried down. Corn. Here are some cobs that I hang up to dry. They were marginal, but animals came and ate them, most of them. It is what it is. There's a few still left on a few cobs, but yeah, that's okay. Like I said, my grade A stuff is still okay inside. This is some carrots, carrot seed. So anyway, yeah, that's stuff that I've put off a little. But you can also when things are relatively dry, like what I'm about to do now, you can just kind of take what before you put. I need to get my dehydrator back in business. The fuse went out, as it often does and should, because that's why it doesn't burn your house down. But that's another video that I'll do on how to replace the fuses on those common dehydrators. Anyway, yeah, so I'm just gonna put these in a jar and then save them for later until it's actually time to dry them down. These are soybeans, and I'll show you in a bit here. There's actually some interesting stuff going on genetically. This is from actually 2 years ago. So I guess I'm selecting for resistance to mold when you just take them and put them in a bag and then leave it in your shed for a whole year. So I've got my current soybean crop here, and that's probably going to look a lot cleaner, but it'll be interesting to see. There are some strange shapes in here. I can maybe show you. They tend to be kind of smaller. I'm hoping that some of these are crosses with glycine soja instead of glycine maxima. What is modern soybean called? I can't remember. But this is another grade down on my seed set here, and so yeah, I'm hoping that's what that is, which is interesting because this is now 2 years old. I guess this is not this season's. This is last season's, whatever that means. 2 years old. I don't know. And yeah, there are definitely some usable ones here. Some are not, but again, that's okay. Let happen. Whatever happens with this stuff. Just keep on keeping on. You've made and here's an inadvertent selection happening on some level because this is my habit. My habit is being kind of disorganized and forgetful, and that's okay. Because it does, I think, on some level bends to your habit, sort of culture, to degrees that we probably can't even really fully comprehend. And that's the cool thing about it, is that you don't have to understand why. You just have to understand sort of the theory behind why it does work and how we can exploit that. So, soybeans. Soybeans, kind of a maligned crop. A lot of people don't like it for various reasons. Most recently, it seems, with organic growers, I don't know, it seems kind of hard to grow organically. I saw one video of a guy, and I won't name names, but he was growing, it was like on an otherwise kind of cool video I was watching, and he was growing soybeans into landscape fabric with like holes popped out for each individual plant, which to me, I guess, suggests that it has a reputation of being hard to weed. Okay, let's go down. Let's go down the next level in the sieve. I think there's still one in there. Let me see. Buckets. You may not love the way it looks back here. I know my wife doesn't. My wife's very tidy. I struggle. Which is why, I leave as little as possible out in the field. Because it's like, this is a sacred place. This is where, you want you want to only be seeing as much nature as possible. And my workspace, is, pretty ratty. These buckets, these are my JLFs, and that's basically all I really do here. This is kind of my desk. It's a good height. There's JLF in there as well. Got a pile of kind of like IMO 4 type stuff going there. There's 2 logs here where I buried some household compost. And yeah, there's tons of worms. That's basically like a DIY worm bin. And that works totally well. And so if you ever want worms, that's a good way to do it. And you can, the soil gets real soft around it. And it's sort of, you lose track of what's soil and what's worm. So, and also, wood, decomposes super quickly when it's in contact with JLF or any sort of heavy kind of liquid fertilizer. So, let's see. It's covered, I think, with just a little bit of dirt here. But then below, you see, it just got really nice, really eaten up. And then there's just, lots of worms, tons of animal activity, a lot going on here. And this is nice looking material. So if things, you can take a little out, put a little in if it starts getting too full. But this is another, I think, really useful way of just not messing with it too much and getting pretty good results. And yes, there is going to be a layer that's anaerobic, but it won't, it won't last forever. And So you don't have to worry too much about what's what. You see the remnants of what we eat in our house. Pistachio, that's shells of that, you know, and stuff. You can see it's breaking down. Like this is, that's a nice looking chunk there. Anyway, so this is pretty easy. It doesn't smell. You keep it covered with the logs. It stays moist. You know, it hasn't rained around here in like, I don't know, 10 days maybe close to 2 weeks. My neighbors, you know, they love their lawns and they're like, oh, this is terrible. The only thing left is some kind of weed. I can't remember what the weed was, but this is the only thing that survives when it's this dry. That's what he was saying. So, anyway, yeah. Happy to see what's going on here. You know, I might use some of this in doing some, you know, seedlings or something in the future. But you know, you're just kind of bringing the beer, and then the party arrives, so to speak, you know, in the soil. And yeah, good looking stuff. Cool. It's always nice to check in with these. This wood, you know, is really breaking down though, which is also, you know, I think a good thing. Like this is very light. It seems to be mostly kind of eaten up. There are parts here that just kind of crumble to the touch. So I might have to get a new log. Cover this up. You know, and the level that you cover it up, I think, is actually, doesn't have to be this extreme. And that's probably sort of radiating out fertility on some level. So I think that the fungal network treats this as like a hot spot for fertility, perhaps. Just a theory. But yeah, even the kind of dried up soil around it, you can see it looks pretty good structure-wise. You know, there's lots of holes in it. And this is the sort of thing where if it rained, you know, the rain knows where to go. There's lots of holes. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of cool to look at. But yeah, back to soybeans. You know, I think that we need to do a little bit of a rethink on how we work with these. I think that this is one of those crops that, yeah, just over time got a little too, I don't know, inbred, or, you know, because if you look at the original glycine soja, it's a vining crop. So soybeans were originally a vining crop. It's pretty small. It reseeds itself here. I had it growing among the okra this year, and there was also some in the soybean patch itself. So I might try to bulk up the amount of glycine soja seed that I have. Maybe do a specific crop of it next year. just to inundate what I've got going on here with the original genetics. I know that's rolling it back a lot, but it doesn't have to be that complicated with population breeding. So it's worth a shot. With a little detasseling or something like it, I think we can pull it off. Why not? I have a story in my head about why teosinte was bred from what it is to what we now know as corn. And that's just because like they were just showing off, or they were bored. They were so good at domesticating other crops. Imagine if the domestication of crops, and this sort of like breeding became such a ubiquitous part of our culture that it became sort of like something you could do at the 4-H fair. Like, let's invent a new food, basically. And that is what you're doing, essentially. You're taking something that you don't consider to be food and turning it into one through selection. Which is really interesting, because it's like there's plants, and then there's food, and there's animals, and then there's food. But there's no real, defining feature of what food is, human food is. And that's, that's one of the chapters in The One Straw Revolution. I think the title is just, What is Human Food? ? And, that's a good way to think of it, is start from nothing. Realize that everything that we, everything was once a wild plant that just lived because it could sort of reseed itself somewhere and be successful in its niche. Trying to get in the light here. So, this is domesticated soybean and hopefully a little bit of wild soybean mixed in there. This is a Grex of soybean. If anybody else is doing anything like this, please, let's swap seeds. I know it's it's kind of hard to get it to cross, and I'm not sure if it even actually is. But I've been doing this. This is maybe the 3rd year. And then this one here will be the 4th year, I think, of growing soybeans together. So we'll see. Casual seed saving can lead to some interesting results.